let's talk about Bob Iger making some comments. Now, I will start off. There wasn't just Bob Iger that had some comments. So the whole thing about this is Bob Iger went on a show. Apparently, this is a show that he likes, and I'd never heard of it, to be quite honest. I think it was called The Rest is History. And so he went on this show, and they came out to Anaheim and go through things. And they had a couple of quotes. So these are the hosts of this show, and what they said here is probably pretty blasphemous, I would say, for Disney fans. But we'll hear this, and we'll listen to what Bob Iger also said.
Julie Andrews, Mary Poppins, and the Sherman Brothers, who wrote the music for Mary Poppins.
Enough of this flipping flim-flammery. Let's go and look at the proper handprints, which are on this side of this lovely plaza.
Does it involve Star Wars?
Yes.
Oh.
That comment right there, you flippantly just say these Disney legends and like, let's go check out the real stuff here, which is Star Wars, which Disney bought like a decade ago.
Right.
Typical Star Wars fan.
Well, that, yes. And you're just like, the Sherman Brothers, like just whatever. Like you wouldn't have Star Wars owned by Disney if it wasn't for the Sherman Brothers.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So it's like I'm sure they're not super into Disney, but it's like that's not a great look when you say that, especially when Bob Iger is your big guest you have on the show. But that wasn't where the controversy ended either. And there is another interesting little comment by Bob Iger here. So that one already made some people angry. And then they went on Pirates of the Caribbean. So this is from Theme Park Obsession. So was the other post. It says, in a new episode of The Rest is History, Bob Iger says this, and we'll listen to it, about Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. There's something about it that is rooted in tradition, quaint in a way.
Exactly.
It's not brilliant storytelling, but it's brilliant execution.
Right.
It's not brilliant storytelling, but it's brilliant execution. Do you agree? I guess we'll start there. Do you guys agree with that?
No, I don't. I mean, I think Iger thinks the story needs to be complicated or complex for it to be a good story. I think a lot of the Mark Davis gags and stuff like that along the way, that's part of the story, and it's brilliant. So no, you don't need a complicated, crazy storyline, and you don't want one on an attraction. You know what I'm saying? So I think the story is actually brilliant for what it has to do with the attraction. I think it's perfect. It's a simple storyline, but that's what you need. And I don't know, man. I think Iger sometimes needs to keep his mouth shut with some of this stuff. Didn't he say Everest was a nondescript mountain or something a few years ago?
Yeah, he's had some comments where if you're one of the people, which I would put in that camp where I say there's been questionable decisions made in the theme parks, and I've had many times where I don't know how much of that ire is on Josh DeMauro and how much of that is obviously Iger is a very hands-on CEO. But comments like this make you think like you don't understand storytelling, because like you were saying, it doesn't have to be complicated, but the execution, like you're talking about things that Imagineers built that there will never be that talent, in my opinion, at any company again. You had Walt Disney running the show. These Imagineers that were underneath him, they were able to do things that nobody's been able to do since. So I'm kind of in the camp of, if it's me, you just shut your mouth and say, isn't it great? You don't have to get any context, any of this.
Exactly. And you're going to come for this ride. Like, of all the attractions, this is the one that you're going to criticize the story. Like, one of the most epic, most legendary attractions ever built for any theme park. And this is the thing he's going to, oh, well, I don't know. It wasn't that great. Oh, come on, Bob.
Yeah.
It's too much.
The old newspaper ads for Pirates of the Caribbean, when it opened, said, it even said at the very bottom of the ad, a robust story. So,
right.
You know, if you're the head ambassador of Disney, you certainly want to make sure you don't have any Freudian slips like this. I mean, is it the best storied ride? No. But I mean, he did get the execution part right. Like it is well executed. But yeah, this is one of those where, like, if you say the wrong thing, you know, you eat a sandwich. And it's just been better, just, you know, if you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. I mean, as head ambassador of the Disney company, I honestly, I completely missed this part when I watched this, because I did watch this. And Kiki and Luca, to your question, why did Bob do this? Bob's actually a really fan. He's a big fan of the show on YouTube. He watches them. And so that's why he's entertaining these guys and giving them a tour and all that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. It's a very small YouTube channel.
Yeah. Kiki and Luca did say Iger started as a weatherman. I like to point that out a lot, by the way. He did start as a weatherman and worked his way up. I don't think Bob Iger is. I'm not convinced. I'm like with Vinton. He says, I'm not a Bob fan. Sorry, just proves my case. I've never been a real Bob Iger fan. I think he's made some good acquisitions. What's happened with those acquisitions? I think, obviously, look at Star Wars. Marvel has not been doing that hot. There's been very questionable decisions. I think that he was handed a very good position after Eisner. And Eisner wasn't perfect, but when it comes to the parks, it's hard to argue that he was handed pretty well. You know, so I guess I should speak of Disney World at least. All the investments that Eisner made that Iger under his tenure has definitely benefited from, of a lot of those things that he was able to do. I get the sentiment by a lot of people. I think a lot of people were actually excited about Iger coming back. And I remember saying at the time, like, he's not going to change much. He was in charge when Chapek was there. He was the chairman of the board. Chapek reported to him and the board. I think, I mean, we've talked about before, I do think it's time for Bob to go. I think he just needs to, I mean, he seems to be in legacy mode anyways, but like you're saying stuff like this, as polished as he is a lot of times, I'm just like, just say, isn't it great? Wasn't Walt great? Like, that's all you got to say. You don't say your commentary is not going to add anything to this. It's only going to detract from it.
Let me bring up a comment from Memory Deed. I think this is a fair question. I think you guys are overthinking it. He probably just meant that it's simple storytelling. I mean, that's a fair point. Is that what you think he meant, Jared and Slammer? That maybe he just meant it was more of a simple story, but it came out wrong?
The problem is, if you're going to say that, you don't say it isn't brilliant storytelling. You can just say, isn't it it's simple storytelling. That's not an insult to say simple storytelling.
Right.
It's just the part where you're putting the caveat, like, this isn't great, but it's simple. It's like it comes across, whether or not he meant that or not, which very well he could have meant it that way.
Yeah.
But you're also talking about you have to also know, when you're the CEO of Disney, which we talked about many times, you have a fan base that is, I mean, people love this stuff. And when you're in charge of these things and you have comments like this would be like saying, somebody takes over Marvel and they're like, Stan Lee's stuff, it was okay, but it was really good art. And you're just like, what? Like, you shouldn't be speaking about anything that Stan Lee did. Things like that is kind of how this comes across, and it could have been meant a different way, but it's how, you're the CEO of this, and this kind of comes across to fans of like, you're not even a fan of this stuff like we are. And as a fan base, they would think that. And I think that's how it comes across.
Yeah, it's not a good look, and it's an unnecessary thing, And you're right,
very unnecessary,
totally unnecessary. And like you said, and you're absolutely right, Jared. When you say it's not brilliant storytelling, you're giving the impression it's not good,
Right.
and that's the issue. Like what you're saying, Remy, would be completely fine, because I said the same thing. It is a simple story. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need a simple story for an attraction, because you're in a boat going past these scenes. You don't want something complex. If you would have said that, I think it would have been fine. I think the brilliant and all that stuff is where I think that's where he got himself into some hot water.
For me, it seems like a little oversight of speech, but again, words matter. And he could have just simplified and said, simple storytelling, but brilliant execution. And he could have dodged it. When you're the lead ambassador for the Disney company, you have to be mindful at all times, which again, it's kind of scary for him. It's scary for anybody in that position, because you're always under a spotlight and everything you say is under a microscope. But I mean, when you're getting paid $25 million a year, who cares? Like, you got to do your job.
Yeah, I would say you're paid to be very careful about what you say.
Right, exactly.
Again, Bob Iger is not going to come out and, regardless of what he may think deep down, they're not going to come out and say anything that's like negative about Walt. And again, that comment, like, yeah, is it nitpicky? Probably, but that's also what you do when you're like a sports fan is going to hear the starting pitcher say something and they're like, what did he say? Like, this is something that fan bases do. And the thing is, Iger knows this stuff, though. That's the thing that kind of gets you where, like you were saying, you're paid all this money. Like, at the very least, like, usually Iger is very conscious of his words, I guess. He's almost like a politician in that way.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not gonna like rake him over the coals. It's not the worst thing that's ever been said. It's just one of those things that leads into, like, I don't think Iger understands a lot of the things that make Disney parks what they have been, or maybe the Disney studios. And it kind of just further is like, I don't think Bob Iger really gets storytelling on a level that has been with Disney in the past, but it's a poor choice of words that probably reflect how he feels about it, which, you know, like I said, it's not gonna, it doesn't change anybody's experience for Pirates.
You know, the one thing that he said that I really liked in that experience with these guys, or his time with them, was he actually said that there's a lot of people that reluctantly don't want to let go of the past. And he says that he kind of said it this way. I'm not saying it verbatim, but essentially something along the lines of, there's too many people that are stuck in the past and want things to stay the same. And if Walt were still alive, he would be embracing all the new technologies and experimenting with them to explore different attraction rides and ideas. And that really resonated with me because I've never heard Bob Iger say that. And that's a very candid thing to say, because what he essentially is doing is he is directly calling out the people that are like, no, Disneyland is a museum and should always stay a museum. Same thing with Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and all these things. And he called them out. And I really did like that, because I really wasn't expecting Bob to do that. And another thing that he actually said was, and I think this is also very true of the Disney community, he said that when he got to the company, that there was too much reverence for Walt, because there was this whole what would Walt do? Right. And every decision that they tried to make was based like trying to get into Walt's head and what would he do? Even when Michael Eisner was there. I mean, that was one of the problems that him and Frank were battling.
Well, you're right, Slimer. I mean, that was when the Walt era was sort of fading and the new era was emerging. A lot in that 1970s era, the creativity really did, you know, kind of fall, right? I mean, and the company itself wasn't even doing that great. And it was because of this obsession with like trying to figure out what Walt would have done. And I think as they went on with like the Renaissance era and stuff, they got out of the what would Walt do mindset and decided, you know what, we're going to make great content again. And we're going to do it in the spirit of what Walt set the foundation for. And I think that was the right mindset, instead of trying to get in the guy's head that passed away years ago. You know what I'm saying? So I think you can get too in the weeds with what Walt would have done. We also have to understand the man has died he died a long time ago now. And I think that trying to figure out what he would have done now is nearly impossible, you know. Yeah. But I do know one thing, and Slimer, you mentioned it, and I think this is a great point that he made. Walt was about making sure that Disneyland and these parks were ever changing, ever growing. And we don't have to love every change, but at the end of the day, the change was built into the DNA of these things. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. Walt would be, in my opinion, again, I'm trying to get in the head of Walt here. You're never like Walt was, guys like him are very rare people. So to even try and say like, it's like me trying to say like, I'm going to get in the head of, you know, Michael Jordan playing a basketball game. Like, that's insane. Like, who knows? Like he's the best to ever do it. Right. So the minute you try, I think that's what Walt would do. You can do things that you think are in the spirit of what you understand, but it's like, do I think that Walt would use technology and all these things to his advantage? Absolutely. Do I think he would do it the way that Eisner, Iger, and Disney does it now? No, because Walt was so different the way he thought. It would look different. So I think you have to be careful when he's saying that, because it's almost like he's giving an endorsement of like, we're doing exactly what Walt would have done. And that's A, we don't know that, but B, I would assume that is not going to be the case. Like Walt would have made different decisions, and he's, you know, stated that the parks are not museums, but it doesn't mean that every single decision that DeMauro and Iger have made in the parks that Walt would have been like, I'm on board. And I think it's just difficult to like, you're trying to put yourself in a mindset that you can't get to because of a lot of reasons, but and the other one being like, Walt's don't walk around that often. And so it's like like somebody admit, I can't remember who had said, is like trying to do things how Walt would have done them would have, you know, almost ruined the company. Walt almost went bankrupt, or he may have even gone bankrupt. Like he really had no business even being successful. Like he, you know, probably led Roy to an early grave with all the stress he put him under about like getting him money to do the things he wanted to do. It's really one of those questions where it's like, there's no real answer to it. You can try and be in the spirit of it, but you're never going to you know, I understand where you'd be coming from running a company that's always, you know, you look at Walt and you're always like, you know, you're always fighting that, but it's, I'm sure it's not an easy position to be in. I will say, to give Iger credit, but you know, you just got to be really careful how you say certain things around certain subjects, and Walt would be one of them, and how you kind of phrase things. I would say.
Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting. You know, it's a very unique company founded by a very unique man. So
Absolutely, yeah.
it's always going to be a minefield navigating.
It is, and that is the thing. It's a minefield because the fan base is going to have opinions, and anytime you invoke that name, you're going to get 50 different people saying 50 different things about what Walt would have done.
Yeah.
You know, there's really no winning when you bring that up. So I understand trying to steer away from it in many ways, but
well, and then the other thing too is like, you know, if we get too literal sometimes with the what would Walt want kind of thing, which I think a lot of fans kind of dive into that too. Well, I mean, Walt technically wanted smoking in his park. Should we bring that back? I mean, there also comes a point where we have to also acknowledge.
I want pipe. I want to walk around with a pipe. I want to see. Listen, I love when you see an old man smoking a pipe. Like, there's just something like distinguished about that. Like, that guy.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to wear a guayabera, and I want to have my cigar box in the front pocket.
I would smoke cigars and pipes in the parks constantly. I want to walk up to old men and be like, share your wisdom with me. You have knowledge. I will gladly accept it. And the man with the pipe would be like, gladly, let's walk around this park and I will give you wisdom. And I'm all ears. I'm all for it the entire time. So I personally, you can ban cigarettes. Now, Walt wouldn't have liked that, but I think pipes and cigars they're classier, I would say.
Yeah. Actually, having a nice cigar at 1901 or Carthay Circle just kind of fits.